Hello and welcome to today's IHRSA webinar, Reopening Strategy Lessons from HV-LP Health Clubs. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to Christine from IHRSA. Christine, if you're ready, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Trevor. Hi, everyone. This is Christine from IHRSA. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar and also thank Zeamo for their support of today's webinar. Zeamo would like to welcome everyone to today's session and is proud to support the fitness industry as we work together to rebuild and thrive in a new normal. Founded in 2017, Zeamo is powered by strong fitness industry partnerships and innovative technology to connect gyms and studios with over 40 million employees with money to invest in fitness through their company-sponsored wellness dollars. Zeamo is a no-cost corporate sales and marketing channel that generates an additive revenue from new users via a secure platform. If you would like to find out how to access the Zeamo network of employers and insurers, contact Zeamo at clubpartners@zeamo.com for more information. And at this point, Trevor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Very good, very good. At this point, I'd like to introduce our session moderator, Caro. Rick is the president of Management Vision, a leading consulting firm specializing in the club industry. He currently serves on 2 boards and 4 advisory boards serving the health club industry. Previously, he was chairman of Spectrum Clubs, a leading club ownership company with plans to consolidate the industry. After only 6 months, it became the 10th largest company in the U.S. with 2 major club clusters in Texas and California. He's a 47-year veteran of the club industry. He previously was the owner of an 8-club organization of multi-sport clubs in the Northeast U.S., which he successfully sold in 1983. Over the last 6 years, he's consulted to over 1,700 clubs. Caro was the founder, past president, and director of IHRSA. He's a frequent writer in various trade publications and the author of the book Financial Management, targeted for the club industry. Rick, if you're ready, the floor is all yours.
Well, thank you all. Appreciate all of you joining today. The purpose of today's webinar is to focus on key elements of the reopening process for clubs. We've selected 2 leaders of club companies in the HV-LP, high volume, low price segment. In particular, we wanted to learn from this segment as it has several challenges that all clubs may have upon reopening, in some cases in even more rigorous terms. Clearly, if clubs in this segment can solve the challenges of reopening, then clubs with more square footage, fewer members, and with perhaps a greater sense of staffing levels may be able to plan their own reopening scenarios with more confidence. So now let me briefly introduce our 2 guest panelists. First is Todd Magazine. Todd joined Blink Fitness 8 years ago as its CEO. He has a rich history as a senior executive previously with PepsiCo, Gatorade, Quaker Oats, and Pfizer. As most of you know, Blink is part of Equinox, which also owns SoulCycle, Pure Yoga, and the Equinox Hotel. It is owned by the related company and L. Catterton, a private equity company. Blink has 108 HV-LP clubs. About 90% are company-owned. They are located in 8 states, with none of them reopened yet. Their clubs are typically in the 17,000 square foot range, with price points around $15 to $22 a month. They do feature personal training as an add-on. They average about 10,000 members per club. Our second panelist is Ben Midgley. Ben is the CEO of Crunch Fitness Franchises. They are up to about 330 U.S. franchises in 34 states. 8 of his clubs have already reopened just days ago in 2 different states. Ben has been in the club industry for 27 years and has led 2 of our major club companies. He is also an author of several management and customer service books. The Crunch franchise clubs are mostly around 23,000 square feet and include 1 to 2 group exercise studios, a small group training area, and a relaxation area of an assortment of spray tanning, relaxation chairs, infrared saunas, etc. They are owned by a private equity company, TPG Growth. So now let me get into the questions that I have for our panelists today so we can all learn from these 2 experts. First, let me start, if I may. As we kind of think about the new normal for health clubs, let's think about how you might describe the way members would enter your club to check in. Would they reserve time and a specific piece of equipment or a class ahead of time, or just show up? Do you think you would require temperature checks? Must they wear a mask? Do they stay apart from others while checking in? If you could paint a picture of the member experience, that would be most helpful. So why don't you lead off, and we'll start with Todd.
Thanks, Rick. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I hope everybody is healthy and well during this crazy time that we're in. Well, it's interesting, as you mentioned, with Blink versus Crunch. I mean, we're still in the planning phase, so most of what I'll share today is more of our thinking. But really, to answer your question, I think the process for our members will start well before they get to the gym. I think the best thing that we can do is to try to inform our members well before they even step foot out of their homes and start to make their way to the gym, and provide them a sense of what our experience and what we're doing in order to make sure that they feel confident in coming back to the gym. So a lot of our focus right now is really making sure that communication and all the digital means by which we can communicate to our members are providing them the information that gets them motivated to first make that step. Because as we all know, there's a lot of people that are very hesitant right now to, one, leave their home, and two, to go back to normalcy of life. So part of our first job in that process is to make sure that we're communicating well. And then as you really start to think about people that are coming back, it will really start with, even before you open that first door, signage that will be outside the gym to tell people and provide some information about what they can expect. We're ideally going to be propping our doors open so people don't have to hold the handles, touch the handles, obviously. Your question about reserving times and equipment, that is not part of our current process at this point. We don't think that some of the capacity restrictions will require that in our gyms. We, unlike Crunch, do not have group fitness, so we don't have any type of reservation typically. And then there's a variety of other things that you're going to see that are going to obviously be very similar to what you're already seeing in other retail businesses that are open. Touchless entry. We're putting screens up in front of the front desk. Signage will be everywhere about social distancing. In terms of what you said about PPE, some of that will be really dictated by the local authorities about what is or what isn't required. Our staff will be wearing masks and gloves, and we will ask our members to wear those as well, although in some cases we won't require it depending on the local ordinances. And then really just laying out the gym in a way that makes it really safe for people. Social distancing, as many people know, trying to enable people to be at least 6 feet from one another, and whether that's pulling out pieces of equipment, shutting down pieces of cardio equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop there. I don't want to go on too long, but it definitely starts before you leave your house, and will definitely be a new way of life.
All right. Ben, you want to join in and share how you see it?
Sure. We've got a lot of similarities, and I think everyone here is going to hear a lot of similarities between what Blink's doing and what we're doing. So I'll just add a few extra things here. One is, depending where you are, the states are going to have a real mixed bag of regulations. Some are going to require capacity management. Some are not. Some are going to require more aggressive screenings than others. Others are not. So, depending if you're a single state operator or a multi-state operator, obviously you'll either have to respond to individual state mandates or multiple state mandates and adjust accordingly. If your state is requiring capacity limitations, then you're either going to have to set up some sort of reservation process, unless you want people standing outside your club like the grocery stores or Costco or something like that waiting to get in, or have some sort of tally counter, which is much less expensive, and there's apps for that where you can just check how many people are in or how many people are out. You've probably seen it at Home Depot, so you've got to be prepared for that. In terms of The check-in for us, a lot of things like Todd's doing. We have a lot of signage. We have welcome when you get to the door, then a ready, set, go station up to the front desk, so it's very clear where people should stand when they're checking in. A lot of directional signage trying to direct traffic like you're probably seeing in some of the grocery stores where they're attempting to have people go one direction down an aisle and down a different direction in another aisle. That doesn't always work. People tend to keep bumping into each other, but it's somewhat helpful for the majority of people that follow it. In regard to the screening, what we've already seen, for example, in Georgia, they require screening, but they don't require temperature readings. In some states, that's going to be viewed as a medical exam, so you got to be a little bit careful with that, though most people would probably let you do it. So a screening could be as simple as, how are you feeling today? Have you been around anybody that has the virus, et cetera? And if they answer yes, then perhaps you go to a temperature screening. So you got to be careful about that. Again, tremendous amount of signage. Our employees will be wearing PPE in the clubs as long as we're required to. Most cases we're not requiring members to do it. I think you're going to see a lot of people doing it, a lot of people not doing it. Hopefully there's not too many people getting offended if somebody isn't doing it, or too many people just being rebels and saying they won't do it. And everything as far as check-in is touchless, and then any billing fixes that need to happen can all be taken care of online, at least for us in the app. And I'd say those are the differences and similarities with us and Todd.
So let me move on to this path of the returning member for a moment. He checks in, or she checks in, heads to a locker room. How does your locker system work now going forward for spacing? Do they grab a towel, and is there an attendant there at all times? What, if anything, will be different about the current locker room experience that you're expecting going forward versus the past? Again, why don't we start off with Todd?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So locker rooms are really going to be on a state-by-state basis of whether they're going to be mandatory closed or not. In all cases, obviously, hang on one sec. In all cases, we're going to make sure that the bathroom facilities are available to people. But in some cases, locker rooms are not going to be available to members, and so we're going to have to block those off. In most cases, we're going to zip tie most of the lockers. Where locker rooms are available, we will zip tie groupings of lockers to enable that 6 feet of social distancing as well. But you have to make, I think by law, you have to make the toilets and the sinks available to people, even if the locker rooms are closed. But we don't have any attendance, and we don't offer towels and the like. So in most cases, that will be a relatively easy process for us.
Okay. Ben, you want to jump in and tell us how you see the locker room experience?
Sure, not too much on the locker rooms, really. We don't offer towel service or anything like that. To Todd's point, state by state, you're going to have to do exactly what people require. For our current clubs that have opened, we have not segmented off certain lockers. Obviously, we thought a lot about that. For our company, we ended up putting together a roughly 40-page readiness plan that covered as many elements as we could. So we certainly contemplated shutting every other locker down or spacing those out appropriately. The clubs that open haven't done it because what they found so far is people are generally just avoiding each other, to be honest, in the locker rooms. So they haven't had a need to regulate for the members yet. But as you go to different states, I'm sure you need to implement those policies. In terms of the locker rooms, the only other aspect that we're doing is we're closing the wet areas. There's no saunas, the showers, things like that until really there's a lot more clearance and support from the states.
Let's move around the club a little bit, and so people can kind of have a sense of how you expect members to experience it. Let's go to the cardiovascular area. How will the club manage the distancing experience of the is not to be used? Will it be covered, just unplugged? How will the club monitor this process so people do exactly what you hope they'll do? Again, why don't you start out, Todd?
Yeah, so our focus right now will be on, obviously, at a minimum, the 6 feet of social distancing. So with equipment, For the most part, cardio, you'll be able to remove or unplug, I should say, every other piece of cardio equipment. We're not going to necessarily cover it up. We're going to put signage on the equipment, but it'll be unplugged, so it won't be usable even if somebody gets on it. And so that's on the cardio side of things. And strength, in many cases, our strength equipment, even with selector eyes, is about 6 feet apart anyway, and where it's not, we'll be kind of moving those. But similar to what Ben was saying before, signage on the floors, signage everywhere to really be making sure that not only the setup is 6 feet apart, but that people are aware of where they should be in relation to other people. So, I'm not as worried about generally the equipment, and obviously things like dumbbells become a little bit more complicated in some of the, areas like the, where you have, equipment like balls and bands and things of the sort. So we can talk about that as well. But with cardio and, the heavier equipment, I think that's going to be relatively easy to manage. And then we're going to have people on the floor, monitoring and finding a polite way to tell people if they're kind of encroaching on other people's kind of social distance boundaries, and really kind of doing our best to really make sure that people are adhering to that. So it'll be a combination of moving of equipment, pulling out plugs of equipment, and then making sure that we have people on the floor constantly monitoring.
And Ben, how do you see it? Any differences or similar?
No, I'd say we're almost identical there. I mean, I think a lot of clubs are. The only thing you have to be a little careful of is some of the more narrow equipment, just shutting everyone down. You might have to go every third piece, depending, if you can get them 6 feet off center. And then for us too, employees, they can't congregate behind the PT desk or the front desk or in certain areas because they can't get next to each other. So we're just trying to train them all to be, friendly compliance ambassadors and be very visible on the floor, to Todd's point, politely reminding folks to, follow gym etiquette and, be mindful of how their actions are affecting the health of others in the club.
Hey, Todd, you had mentioned a minute ago the free weight area. We know that people like to move around benches and do various things. Do you have any idea of how you see that really functioning? Obviously, you're not open yet to know exactly how it's going to play out, but what do you think are going to be some of the ways you're going to try and monitor what you want to happen versus what people may naturally do as they've done in the past? So what are some of the thinking regarding the free weight area in particular?
Yeah, free weight area is actually the one area where we're going to be removing some benches. It's interesting. We've added benches over the years because free weights have become such a popular area, and now we're going to be removing benches so that we can enable that proper distancing. And ultimately, what we're going to probably end up doing is putting some markings on the floor and requesting that people don't move the benches around. To your point, that's a natural tendency in the gyms. So if we can do something on the floor, and then obviously having our staff monitor that will be really important. But that's a more difficult one because obviously benches have wheels and you can move them around. But our hope is that by marking the floor and keeping a careful eye on things, that people will stay appropriately apart.
And any thoughts from your standpoint, Ben?
Well, most of our equipment, after that large lawsuit in the industry years ago, where a piece of equipment fell on someone, we bolted down our equipment, so there's not much options to move it around. They're all generally spaced appropriately. We probably only have, a small amount of clubs that have free benches that they can move around and snuggle up to other people with, and we're obviously going to be paying close attention to that and obviously hopeful, too, our members follow proper etiquette and don't do that. They're going to get some funny looks if they're getting too close.
So
the one area, hey Rick, it's Todd. The one area that gets a little tricky, I'm curious what Ben is doing with the open gyms, but we have mats and balls and bands and things that people are using and putting back, and I think we all know that those are many things that people usually don't clean as well as they should. So, our instinct is to take some of those off the floor and to either store them up at our front desk and our staff will clean them and people will kind of check them out, or remove them from the floor entirely and let people either bring their own or sell them. So we're looking at some different options there.
If I can switch gears to one of the big topics that we're all dealing with, which is cleaning. And obviously, it's a focus. And we all recognize that users want us to be, will be, hypersensitive to the need for a higher level of cleaning and more regular cleaning than in the past. So can you share how the general areas of the clubs will be cleaned? What kind of apparatus are you thinking of? What's the frequency of cleaning? And then more importantly, how are you going to educate the member on this heightened level of safe environment going forward? And again, why don't you lead off, Todd?
Well, let me start with the member piece of it. One of the things that Ben talked about, and I didn't mention it, but we're doing something when our members come in that we're going to ask them to essentially agree to, which is essentially what we refer to as blink responsibly, and these are kind of our house rules and the things that we're going to ask of them, and one of them is to be mindful and realize that they're in a community and within the gym, and we're going to ask them to play their part in the cleaning process. So that's the first piece of it. The second piece of it, we have always had an everyone cleans philosophy. Our whole kind of point of being in many cases has been about maintaining a clean environment, and we're going to be upping those by cleaning constantly, by adding people on the floor. A lot of this is really just making sure that it's visible and that our members are seeing us cleaning, and hopefully they will follow suit. So we'll be doing that all day long. We're doing multiple deep cleaning of the gym throughout the day. So in addition to the kind of the just ongoing, these will be 3 or 4 deep cleaning processes that we will go through. And then through the overnight, when we're shutting down, we'll be using what's called an electrostatic sprayer, which is basically, and I actually had a chance to go into one of our gyms the other day and use it. It's pretty amazing. And you really can spray large pieces of the gym equipment, difficult to get to areas of the gym, and that really adds a layer of disinfectant overnight as well. So we're going to be cleaning throughout the day. Some cases it's going deeper and then doing an overnight cleaning as well. And, we're hopeful that our visibility of our staff on the floor throughout the day is really going to encourage our members to participate in that cleaning process.
Ben, would you like to add something?
Yeah, a couple of things. There's a number of machines that I'm sure everyone on the call has researched them. You have the electrostatic sprayers if you can get them, foggers, Clorox 360 is very expensive. There's some air treatment products that people are trying to buy now, like Airfix and Halo. They're just a couple of brands. They're very expensive, but you can put them into your HVAC system, and they essentially, recycle the air and put some product on there on the machines that will settle on there and keep it there for a while. We've got obviously very enhanced cleaning protocols for all the clubs, for the front desk to the equipment to the floors to the relax and recover area. A number of clubs will be closing down at certain intervals to do that cleaning, and obviously a heavier cleaning at night. And then to Todd's point, the whole staff has to regularly be cleaning, and then obviously increase sanitation stations around the club. Most clubs already have a lot of them anyways, but you're almost doubling up here in terms of what you're putting out there. And you have to make sure your disinfectant sprays actually kill the virus. A lot of people actually don't use disinfectants that kill the virus, so you've got to double check your product. And it's going to cause cost increases, right? So there's a consideration there that how are you going to absorb that and adjust to that. But something else I want to throw out that's really important, and we did this work before clubs were forced to close down, is you want to have a matrix for your staff in terms of how to interact with exposure to COVID-19. So an example, if a member or an employee is infected with the virus, and then you're notified, what do you do? What are your protocols with the team? What are your protocols with notifying members? Then you have to have another level if someone is exposed to someone with the virus and you're made known of that. And then there's a third level, exposed to someone who was exposed to someone. So, you know, as silly as it sounds, it's an important process to go through. So I encourage everyone to put together that matrix for both what do you do with your team members in that respect and what do you do with members in that respect. So, you know, something to bear in mind.
Just kind of following on some of the things on cleaning, because it's such an important area for all of us going forward. I've rarely seen a member clean a particular piece of equipment very well. In all my years, I think in some cases they will wipe the particular upholstery that they sat on, maybe touch, let's say, a strength piece of equipment where they touch some of the pads, but never think to touch the pins or the underneath of where they were sitting or the side of the upholstery, etc. So it's hard to make them expert cleaners when they've never done that before. But I think it sounds like we're trying to empower members to take a greater involvement in the process. How are you going to kind of enforce or monitor or teach them to be really helpful, even if they want to, when they haven't really been on a cleaning crew before? And even if they want to, they may not be very good at it. So if you expect them to participate, is there some kind of a coaching process or mentality? Because you referred, Todd, to people being responsible. Is there some way in which they're going to help do a better job than they might have in their kind of slapdash way that they've done it before?
Well, that's a tough one. Look, here's what I would say. Just in my experience over the years, what we have seen is because cleaning has been such a big part of our culture and DNA, and the fact that our staff is always cleaning throughout the day, and sometimes, quite honestly, annoying members that we're cleaning around them. But what I've seen is that people are, when they see that behavior, it's kind of contagious. And so my hope is that the members, while we're not going to be able to train them to clean the way we would clean, and obviously everybody's idea of whatever standard they have in terms of cleanliness is going to vary. My hope is that, you know, there are going to be people that are extra cautious, and whether it's the staff or the members, that everybody's going to kind of go out of their way to do the best they can. Now, all that being said, it's our job, not the members' job, to clean. And so we are ultimately going to make sure that we have enough staff and enough activity going on throughout the gym so that as best we can to kind of follow the members and to clean the equipment as best we can. Obviously, we hope they do a good job, but we can't be solely reliant on them to do that. And just one other comment I want to make, because Ben brought it up, and I think it's a really good point. You know, Blair McKinney led this research, industry research, that I think has been helpful for all of us to see. And, you know, the idea of having enough cleaning supplies available, wipes and sprays and things that people the member can access, making sure that those are within, you know, essentially arm's reach of almost every piece of equipment is really, really important. And I think that that's going to be a critical part in this, which is you can't run out, you can't have it 20 feet away, because if it's 20 feet away, people are not going to use it. So, you know, I think more gyms are obviously looking, and Ben made the point about increasing in the cost piece of it, but I don't think we have a choice as an industry to really make sure that we make that as accessible as possible, because that is the first and most important piece of it. Otherwise, people are never going to do it.
Okay. Just one last kind of theme on this cleaning concept. We're hearing from clubs in China and Singapore that they've actually do an overhaul cleaning for about a half-hour chunk where the club is actually closed. And they actually do this, what I'll call this top-down cleaning, in a very aggressive way. Obviously, that's not what is often contemplated with clubs here. But separate from that, how are we going to make members aware of the process so that we satisfy their safety and their health and feeling comfortable? Because it's such a fanatical concern for so many, both existing members as well as potential members going forward. Why don't you lead off, Todd?
Well, look, we're not planning on doing any kind of closing of the gym throughout the day to clean. You know, we believe that it's better to clean constantly throughout the day. And, you know, the other part of it, and other gyms have done this in Asia, and I know others are doing it in the U.S., you know, slots for people and then asking people to leave. I mean, there's so much that people are already compromising. So, you know, our focus really is, and, you know, not to be a broken record, but to be as visible and as you know, focused on making sure that people are seeing all the things we're doing. And again, I go back to so much of this is getting people to take that first step. I mean, there's a lot of people that are very nervous about coming back, particularly to gyms. And I think our job as brands and as businesses is to convince them that we're doing the things to at least get them to consider that and come back. And then when they do, to live up to that and to not only put it on a piece of paper, but to do the things that you are putting in all your marketing materials. And our job and our goal is to make sure that we're living up to that. And I have great confidence that our team's going to be able to do that.
And what about you, Ben? What is your thought?
Yeah, I got a couple of things, and I want to throw a few points in on sort of the previous topic, which is similar. But one, before you open, one thing that's really important, and we're doing this in our clubs, is that you have to get your teams in there well ahead of time. You have to show them what it's like to wear a mask and interact with people with masks. You have to show them proper spacing so your people aren't right next to each other. You have to literally go through all aspects of it. If you're going to run spinning classes, you've got to make sure they understand what it is like to, you know, run a class with those distances. How are you checking people in? How are you accessing the, you know, the cleaning supplies? Where are they all located? How often do you restock? I mean, everything you can think of, you want to have several dry runs with your teams before your club opens. There's no way any operator can get it right without a dry run. So please bear that in mind. Ricky had a great point on the pins. That was actually something after we went through this massive plan here that, you know, we didn't think of. And then somebody says, well, what about the pins? And, you know, there's so many things that need to be cleaned in the clubs. It's almost nearly impossible to cover every aspect of it. So you do have to rely on the members to a degree and the efficiency of your staff. But to one point, you can only do the best you can. It makes me think of going to the grocery store. We're not the only people that picked up that box of cereal. And, you know, there's no way around it. And other people are picking up food and putting it down. So I don't think any retail group is you know, fully clean on this one. Every time you pick up a handle at a gas station, anytime you go into Walmart, there's going to be areas that are missed. So you can only do the best you can. And in terms of the cost point I made, I certainly wasn't trying to dissuade anyone from doing that. I just wanted to make sure that everybody actually doesn't skip it. There is going to be a cost. You have to eat it. You can't avoid that one. So I just wanted to throw out that it's a consideration in your membership pricing to look at, similar to, you know, baggage fees or grocery stores charging for paper bags or whatever it is, fuel surcharges. And then finally, I think Todd mentioned it, you know, there's really nothing worse than saying you're going to do something and then 3 weeks in, you feel a little relaxed and you're not doing it. That's what's going to hurt our industry the most. I can tell you this, when we opened in Georgia, CNN sat in our parking lot and they would not leave until the club let them in. And then luckily, you know, that's one of our best owners, operators. They had 12 people in the club with masks doing all the cleaning. They let them in. They got, you know, some great piece. They never aired it, unfortunately. Maybe it was too good news, but you're probably going to have media in your market. So make sure, you know, you put your money where your mouth is.
So let me go to you, Ben, if I may. You have group exercise studios. Will you open them right away? If not, what will you do when you do open them? What will they be like? Because obviously we're hearing constraints on how many people can be accommodated in the same area that used to have perhaps more than less. You have a high volume story. So what's your thinking of how the studios will function going forward, knowing full well in some cases that they may not yet be open as part of the overall facility at this moment?
Sure. Probably not a lot different than a lot of people on this call, but our group fitness rooms are pretty big in general. They're anywhere on the smaller side between 2,000 square feet and I'd say 3,500. So we're certainly, you know, limiting the amount of people that can go into those rooms, not necessarily due to capacity restrictions from the states at this stage anyways. I'm sure we'll run into that, but just as a matter of caution. So we're going to make sure that people have approximately 8 feet of space between each other. We're going to require pre-registration for the classes. Equipment is going to be limited and cleaned regularly. You can modify your schedule so you can do classes that really don't require a lot of equipment, but you've got to really make sure you sanitize that equipment. Having members bring their own equipment, mats and so on and so forth, is also a very good idea. And then classes can be moved outside as well, so you can have a little creativity, a little flexibility there. But that has to be run properly. In terms of our first clubs that opened up, I'd say the first 30 days, nobody's doing it just to ease in appropriately, and then we'll be starting to phase it in with those capacity restrictions that we're placing upon ourselves. And from that point forward, hopefully we can get back to a little bit of a sense of normalcy and slowly add capacity. The other thing, obviously, we're not opening initially is Kids Club because kids have no idea how to social distance. They're all over each other, so we're going to be keeping those closed for a while.
So let's also, you do have group cycling in your clubs. How do you see that working given the fact that people are going to have to spread out, et cetera? How do you see a number of people who can be accommodated at the key times? Will it be much less than before as a percentage of the total? Will there again be a reservation system? Will you try and do things like shorter classes and more classes to accommodate people? What's your thinking of how you're going to go about the whole category of group cycling?
Yeah, it's all very similar, Rick. There's smaller rooms, right? So you're going to have on a percentage basis, you're going to have a greater capacity loss in a spinning room than you're going to have in a group fitness room, just because the bikes are generally so close. You're going to have to take out a lot more to appropriately run the class and make everybody feel comfortable. And then the reservations, of course, are gonna have to be in place. And then cleaning, the bikes they're permanent there, so not that hard to clean. You just got to spray them down really well. Make sure you get everything. You got to clean the floors a lot better too. A lot of sweat, and ventilation has to be appropriate in the space as well.
So let's now do a quick run through of what you will and will not offer initially. And I'll just go to you both quickly. I think you covered this. Will you allow people to use sauna steam rooms in a locker room? I think the answer is no. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, it'll be no. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That is correct on our answer.
What about showering? I think I heard yes for showering.
No showering.
No showering and no showering. No child care. What about personal training, Todd? Are you going to offer that right away?
We are. We've actually, interesting, Rick, you mentioned the Asia market before. We've learned a lot from what's going on there, and they've been able to get their personal training businesses back up to pretty significant levels, not quite back to pre-COVID levels, but back to pretty hefty levels. And they've been able to do social distancing and all the things that are obviously going to be needed to do that. So we are planning to do that. We're also introducing virtual personal training, which is a new part of our offering that we're going to be announcing in the coming days. So that's going to be a new part that for those people that don't want to come in and work one-on-one with a personal trainer.
And when you say personal training, does that mean the trainer and the client will be within 6 feet of each other, or sometimes yes, but generally not? How will that function?
They will be 6 feet or more. So we've already, to Ben's point, we've done some prototyping earlier in some of our gyms of how to do it, and really trying to set some standards for making sure that people are at least 6 feet apart. So the goal is to not have them at any time less than 6 feet of distance.
Okay, and what about small group? Let me ask, if I may, Ben, what about personal training on your end?
Yeah, same thing. We're gonna offer it. I mean, they're gonna have to have PPE for all the trainers, the social distancing. Some clubs, in all honesty, are looking into if a member is requesting it, because they need assistance, they need somebody to hold the bar or somebody to do something a little easier, that there's some sort of waiver or agreement in place that they could do that. We haven't started that yet, but there's definitely going to be a percentage of the population that doesn't want their trainers 6 feet apart. Look at that similar to a waiter coming up to a table or something to that effect when the restaurants are allowed to have in restaurant dining. So it's a little bit of a tricky one, but for starters, there's going to be plenty of space.
Both of you, how about small group training? Will you offer it?
We will. Yeah, we usually have about 16 people. We have some proprietary and custom-made wall mounts for us, so it's fairly easy to modify the amount of participants to that, and they're all station-based, and you've got to move around to different stations. You can even take you will be taking 30-second intervals to clean your space before you move to the other space, so helps keep your heart rate working out.
Okay, what about Todd, small group training and all?
We don't offer that at all. We have some locations that offer it, and not many. So we will where we have small group training, we will offer it, but maintain all the social distancing and cleaning protocols. The other piece of it as well, Rick, for what it's worth on the personal training piece, having trainers on the floor, the other benefit, at least as we see it, is more eyes and ears to really enforce cleaning and social distancing protocols. So it's one of the other benefits that we see of starting up with personal training right away is having more staff on the floor. So that's just one of the other things that we think, is a real advantage.
So let me switch to maybe the biggest question that everyone is asking is, how do we get our existing members to come back right away? Are there any particular thoughts, inducements to try and get people to come back as close to opening as possible? And once you lead off, then what's the thought in this direction?
Well, I mean, I'll just give you the experience we have so far. With our clubs that are open now, we've got 8 open now. We're guessing between 40 to 50 by the end of the month. We've seen between 30 to 50% usage right off the bat. A lot of enthusiasm, from those members, but you've got a really split view on this across the country, right? So if you look at some of the data from other countries, it started in a similar manner, and then within about 3 months, it was almost close to the same workout levels year over year. So we're expecting something like that. We're planning for that. The members are going to have to. You're going to have to earn their trust, and they're going to have to, build up their comfort as they come into the clubs. And there's going to be a lot of word of mouth. They're going to talk to others. From the standpoint of encouraging members to come in, again, it's member communication. You don't want to over communicate. I'll be the guy that says it because, if you have a bunch of members that aren't using the club regularly, sometimes you over communicate. You remind them to cancel. But you have to communicate enough so that you've hit them a few times and they're comfortable with what you're doing. Then they take the chance to come in. And you can also work on different promotions based on usage rather than promotions based on referrals. For sales. Come in, get back involved in the club, use the club 2 times a week, 3 times a week, enter to win. What have you. I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of creative people on here that come up with some great promotions, but I think usage is the most important factor right now as opposed to sales, and then, turn to sales later.
So Rick, Todd, what I would say is, to me, I think the brands that are going to win in the market are the brands that have historically delivered on strong execution. If you've been clean, if you've been well operated, then when you go to your members today, you say, trust us, we're going to be clean, we're going to be safe. If you've done that historically, I think you have a much better chance of bringing people back, and not by any means to disparage anybody, but I'll speak for only the gyms I manage, and I think that we have a very good story to tell our members because we've always stood for something that is about clean and safe and all the things that are important to people right now. And I think our message, hopefully, will be very consistent, and there will be an element of trust. You then, to Ben's point, have to earn their trust again when they come into the gym and live up to that. And then, we believe referrals ultimately are going to be the most important thing at this point. Not only referrals as we think about from a future sales standpoint, but referral from the other member standpoint. I mean, the best thing that we could possibly do is to do a great job. And if people go, and whether it's word of mouth or social media, whatever it is, tell people how good their experience was coming back. But for me, what I'm most excited about is that this is not a new rodeo for us. We have always been clean. We've always been outstanding operators. We've always operated at a level that, our members have rewarded us for. And hopefully that will, be important and resonate with people as they think to come back.
So let me go to this famous elusive category called people on leaves of absence. When you do anything different to get them back right away, not in general, but right away, such as trial visits at no cost before they have to decide whether they want to transfer to active status as a paying member, or other ideas that you would try and work on specifically the leave absence people who may come back, but they may not come back for quite a while. So what is it that we might want to say and do with them that would encourage them to come back sooner rather than later? Why don't you lead off, Ben?
Well, let me just make sure I understand the question. You're talking about members on freeze, Rick?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a couple ways to look at that. I don't know that there's a best strategy to get those folks back because, we've seen a lot more freezes and cancels, which I think is a good sign for us. Hopefully that's true around the industry, but those people are freezing for a reason, right? They're uncomfortable, they're not sure. Maybe they live with someone who's in a higher risk category. So, for us, at least, we want to respect that. We don't want to be viewed as overpressured. We just want to be viewed as we're doing the right thing in terms of, providing a clean and safe environment. And, the team members are trained to do that and support the members. So we haven't really given a tremendous amount of thought to trying to reactivate them very quickly, but rather, more your active members and getting them back in the club. And, I think that group, 50%, as I already mentioned, are excited. They're anxious to get back. They're dying to get in the club and feel better. And the other ones, they just got to stick their toe in the water, and then get back in.
Okay, in terms of how you think about credits and billing, for a while we were closed for, let's say, a partial month. Depending on when you open, it might be another partial month. For some clubs, they have annual or enhancement fees. What are you thinking about how the billing process works and what you would like to have as a message going out from your clubs to the member, given the fact that they've been closed and you may have collected money, but maybe you haven't, but you want to start collecting money? What are the thinking that goes on from all of you as to how you go about reinitiating billing at this point? Why don't you start, Ben?
Okay. Well, that's a big one. Required a tremendous amount of thought. We've got a 1.5 million members or just over that, so got a lot of different types of memberships in the clubs, but it's one area that everyone has to get right. Everyone's seen the lawsuits that are going out. I won't name the companies that were perhaps overly aggressive in terms of billing, but on the flip side, there's plenty of organizations that have taken different approaches. I'm just digressing for a second here. Like the YMCA, they're continuing to bill people. They're trying to, position more as a charitable organization. I've seen some really nice stories of health clubs that have, asked members to, continue to pay their dues so they can pay their employees. I saw a really nice one on ABC News the other day. So that's a little bit more prevalent in the independent market, or if you're a smaller operator. For a larger operation, that's really not the way you go. So you have to focus on getting your billing done appropriately. Proration is going to be very important. People only need to pay and should only pay for the time that you're open. So you're going to have to go through some administrative work to get those right. You're going to have to give a lot of credits. You can give credit for, dues. You can give it for product in the club. You can give it for retail. There's a lot of creative ways to do that. Billing dates, in our opinion, shouldn't be modified. So if you reopen and you go to bill everyone at the same time because you didn't bill them at one point, you've got to really make sure that your agreements allow for that state law allows for that, because you don't want to be too anxious to get back to regular billing, then put yourself in legal jeopardy. So make sure what your agreement states and what your state regulations are. Then also bear in mind, if you are going to make a move, like trying to change everyone's billing date to a certain date, that how that's going to affect your cash flow. But for us, we're just stepping back into billing people on the days they're supposed to be billed, and working forward that way, and then providing tremendous amount of guidelines to the operators. We're a network of independently owned and operated franchises, so we provide the framework, and then we've got to trust that they're doing the job well. Obviously, we'll be inspecting that, but you've got to get every member right on this one.
Todd, what do you think about the whole billing world from your standpoint?
Yeah, so we have not made any final decisions on this one, so I'm gonna pass on the question and just say we're gonna do the right thing for the member. I mean, ultimately, we're in a member business and we're gonna do the right thing, but what we actually do is still TBD. I do want to go back to just one comment on the prior question. I just think is important for people on the phone if they're not aware. And sorry to keep going back to the Asia market, but I think we're all learning, whether it's applicable or not. I think it's at least another data point. Because they were continuing to offer freeze options for members upon reopening, they're seeing cancellation rates that are somewhere around 1% or less. So I think, one of the encouraging things that having a freeze option when you reopen for those people that are just not ready to come back, giving them that choice to pause versus just being in a binary, bill me or let me cancel. At least in the Asia market, that has proven to be very successful so far in terms of cancellation. So I think that that part of it is very encouraging, and hopefully as people get more and more comfortable, more of those people will come off freeze and will become active members again.
Let me build on Todd's comment. We should just be aware that in the Asian market, people prepay, that is, they in effect pay for their year's membership in advance. So when he's talking about cancellation, those are people who already made a year's commitment or some months still left of that, who are now choosing to cancel, as opposed to monthly dues and feeling in many cases that they can make a choice every month as to whether they want to continue or not. So there's a slight nuance with the data there. Let me switch gears. Let me switch gears entirely, if I may. One of the great questions we have is with staff. At this point, many people, unfortunately, had to furlough or, unfortunately, terminate some of their employees. So the question now is, we want to get them back because we're going to open, and we want to train them. And in many cases, maybe certain categories are easy to get back. They're enjoying the unemployment experience too well. So how do we see the attracting back the former employees, especially the ones we want back? How will they function going forward? Will we switch some of the roles and have them take on revised duties? How will they participate in the cleaning process where they weren't before? How do we kind of think about the whole staffing and what I'll call re-recruiting process? And why don't you lead off, Todd, and tell us what your thoughts are?
Well, look, we haven't gotten to that point yet. So, our hope is that, we have furloughed the vast majority of our field staff. And our hope is that ultimately a significant portion of those people will choose to come back. In terms of what roles they will play, again, I go back to pre-COVID days. We have always been, we have an everyone cleans philosophy. So when I go into the gyms, I'm demonstrating that as well. And I never feel it's below me to clean a toilet or do whatever, just to demonstrate to people that if we all are doing that, the gyms will stay clean. So that's always been a part of our mantra, and I don't think that will change. Now, all that being said, people our staff are people too, and they're going to feel being in an environment like this, they're going to have similar trepidations, or some staff might have similar trepidations that we expect our members to have. So part of our goal is to make sure that we're keeping our members safe and being respectful of their concerns and their issues. But the expectation is everybody's going to clean, everybody's going to participate. And the hope is that ultimately we do whatever we can to make sure that we keep our members and our staff safe.
Very well. I'm watching our time, and we have a lot of questions from the audience, but let me continue with a couple more that I have. And if we can't get to everyone's question, what we can try and do is pass them on to the panelists. and try and get answers for you after the fact. But just thinking right now, big picture, what do you think your biggest challenge will be in the first 30 days after opening? What are you most concerned about going forward? Start off with Ben.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest concern, I would say, really is the whole thing, right? This is a different world. No one's ever experienced it, so we're all going to be learning every day. And thankfully, we're in a good industry that likes to share. But usage is the top of mind. Attrition, freeze levels. What are those going to look like? My gut says those are going to be a little high for a little while, then they're going to level off. Sales. What's that going to look like going forward? One thing I do want to say, even though you don't want to be overly aggressive, because I think some people view it as insensitive now, but don't be afraid to sell. The product's still as needed as it ever was before this happened, and if you don't honestly sell memberships, just the way attrition works in our industry, you can't stay in business, right? Because you have to sell up to your attrition levels and then above it and beyond it. So don't be afraid to sell. Just talk to your staff about doing it professionally and appropriately, so you can keep rolling. Costs are going to increase, so you've got to factor those in there, right? And then when you come back to business, I didn't get a chance to time on the last one. You don't need to hire everybody back immediately, though we all want to. A lot of folks may not even come back because they've got a higher income on unemployment when these extra benefits roll through July. So, step into your rehiring, watch your cost management very closely, and hire back as your needs require. But honestly, I think we're going to be back, and I think within a year we're going to be stronger.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, look, I think Ben, I agree with a lot of what Ben said. The only thing I would add is, probably the most important thing that we can do is just make sure that we do provide the safety and provide the health and wellness benefits that we ultimately are all trying to do. I mean, the last thing that any of us wants is somebody to get sick because of something that happens in the gym. So I think really, again, I said it before, but not only putting pretty words on a piece of paper about all the great things you're going to do, but living up to that and delivering so that you can really make sure that people are staying out of harm's way. And then, look, we all know that if we can get people to come back, I mean, the best defense in the world of these types of viruses is a healthy immune system. So that is key. But I think Ben said all the things that are on my mind, but I think, really making sure that we live up to as an industry, live up to all the words that we put on our websites in terms of the protocols of keeping people safe and healthy.
Big picture question. For most people, this has been the worst time in the history of the industry in terms of financial challenges. You have no income coming in for many weeks. We have financial obligations. What have you used, or in the case of Crunch's franchises and the case of Blink's franchise companies, what have they used for financial resources? Have they gone to bank lines of credit? Have they asked for equity infusion to get them solid through this? Have they availed themselves of government programs? Could you share what you think has been the ways they've been able to cope with the financial hardship as best you can, so that people who are listening can have an idea of some of the tools that people have had to use? Why don't you lead off, Ben, if you don't mind?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, that's one of the challenges of being in business, right? You're in business, so when things get tough, you've got to get a little tougher yourself. In terms of the steps that hopefully everyone's taken, and I'm sure most people have, is, one of your biggest expenses is rent. So you've got to get out and you've got to be talking to your landlord. And a lot of landlords have been accommodating from what I've seen. The larger REITs, have had discussions with their lenders, so they've got some leniency from the debts that they have due, and then they in turn hand that off to the franchisees. But, landlords come in all different shapes and sizes. Some have not been helpful. In some cases, you have to literally threaten a bankruptcy if you have the nerve to go that far to get them to move. So you must talk to your landlord. You must get a deferral. If you have an equipment lease, you have to get deferrals on those payments. Most lenders I've seen have been, fairly accommodating on that. There's no money coming in, so very challenging to to ask someone to make those payments. They don't want to, come and take your equipment and then have you, fight them over a guarantee. It's not going to help anybody out in this situation. We're all in this together. Did you act quickly enough in terms of furloughing your employees? Now that's that bites on both sides, right? Because a lot of people want to keep their employees on payroll as long as they can, but there are limitations within your business. So hopefully everybody, managed those as well as they could. After that, then you have to decide how much, debt you want to take on versus what cash and liquidity you currently have. So the SBA programs have been very helpful. We've had a lot of people get the PPP loans. Obviously, there's a bit of a complicated, formula there for the ratios. You have to put 75% towards payroll, but most health club operators are nowhere near that as a percentage of their expenses. Only so much can go to your landlord, to lease payments, to utilities, and then there's a ton of documentation to get that forgiven. But look, it's money. It's good to have nonetheless. There's two other SBA loans. The other one I'll just mention is the EIDL disaster relief loan. You can get up to $2 million. Of course, there's a calculation behind that. That is debt, but it's long-term debt. It's a 30-year loan at 3.75% interest. So, if you don't mind taking on that debt, it could be, the money that saves your business. In other cases, you may have to make decisions on, do you go to the bank directly or do you take in an equity partner and dilute yourself? So without getting too technical, there's a lot of options there, but you've got to, think long and hard about that and, be very, very sharp on your expense management and then stepping back into the business wisely when you start spending.
Okay. Todd, you have some comments on these?
No, I think Ben covered all the key points that I think are really important in terms of, whether it's, lenders or landlords. I think he hit on all the points. I really don't have much to add.
All right. We have one final question I have, and then there are a number of questions that the attendees have shared, which we will not be able to get to all of them today. So we'll try and respond after the fact. So thank you for sending them in. But one final question. As tough a period as this has been for all of us, is there any silver lining you can think of that's come out of this? Is there anything you can take pride in, given the fact that it's been the most difficult period in the business we've ever had in my 47 years in the industry? Is there anything that we can look at and go back and say, I'm really proud of the following? What would you respond to that, Ben? Why don't you start off?
Got me first on that one, huh? I mean, I love the question. I mean, it really is because, that shows it's really the right attitude. And, there is always a silver lining. I don't know that it's fully shown it yet. Look, one thing that's definitely happened across the country is there's a lot of studies that show the current activity level is down 40% from what it was, the same period, last year and even just a couple months ago. But people need to be active. I think part of being, locked up for so long is that people realize how important activity is and, to managing your stress and managing your health conditions. Obviously, there's a lot of folks that have, diabetes or heart disease or other things that need to keep them active. So I think there's another appreciation for that. On the sad side, everybody being locked up is, you've seen a huge increase in, suicide and domestic violence and child abuse. So, people have to get out and then, for what we do in our industry, helping people cope with, all of those things and stress relief is really it's what we do. It's probably what we all signed up for and why we all got in the industry. So if there's a silver line that I can see now is that I think people are going to have a greater appreciation for that. And, we're the folks to fit the bill for that one.
Well, thank you. Todd?
Yeah, I got three. I think one is it's incredible to see the creativity that has been forced upon us, or I should say that the situation has forced us to all be much more creative. I mean, I just look about what's going on digitally now and how virtually every company, at least the major companies, are pivoting and offering now digital solutions. And I think we've leapt forward many years in the future because of really necessity. I know we're doing it. I know Crunch is doing it, and many others are doing it. So I think there's a lot of benefit in pushing and advancing a very important part of what I think the industry needs to do. Number one. Number two, I think it's forced us all to prioritize. I mean, we all have to-do list that are, dozens and dozens of things that we need to do. And now between cash and people, we just don't have the opportunity, and I think it's forced us to focus on the most important things. And I'll throw out the third one that I think is unclear, but I think is going to change all of our lives, is that we've proven that you can work from home effectively. And what does that mean? I think it's going to vary from business to business, but I think that's going to change, business in general and how people operate and the flexibility that companies give their employees. And I think that's going to be a very interesting part of our near-term future. So I think there's a lot of really positive things, and obviously lots of negative things as well. But from a silver lining standpoint, I think we've proven that there's a lot of great things that can happen in times of tragedy and stress.
Well, thank you both. I'd like to now, first of all, our sponsor, Zeamo, for making today's webinar happen in the first place. They're a major company that's going to be a major force in our industry going forward. I'd also like especially to thank our two expert panelists, Todd Magazine of Blink and Ben Midgley of Crunch Fitness. And then if you think of others in your club organization who you think would benefit by hearing this session, it is being recorded and will be available in IHRSA's library beginning next week. So thank you, IHRSA, for helping to educate the industry once again during this difficult time. Thank you all for attending today. I appreciate you taking the time to do so. And I'll turn it back to Trevor, our host. Thank you.
Very good, very good. I believe that's all the time we have for today. Before you shut down, please take a moment to fill out the survey that you'll see on your screen momentarily. We appreciate any feedback you can provide to help us improve future webinars. Again, thank you all for joining us today and for your participation. As always, thanks to our speakers for sharing their expertise. We hope you have a great afternoon.